I am advised by proclamation that the 2026 sitting of the Youth Parliamentarians of the Parish of St. Mark, duly appointed, should meet and transact the business of this Honourable House. On this 15th day of July, 2026, I am further advised by the proclamation that the affairs of this Youth Parliament will be conducted with wisdom, temper, and prudence, and that upon all occasions the rights of all citizens, members, will be respected and recognized. Thank you.
Honorable members, I am not unmindful of the honor which have conferred on me today in electing me to the highest office, that of your Speaker and your servant. And secure for each member the right to express his or her opinion within the limits necessary to preserve the decorum of this House. I pledge to recognize the rights and privileges of the honorable members and House itself. I wish also to assure you that I will preside in a manner which will facilitate the orderly transaction of debate, and above all, I will seek to be fair and impartial in the decision the rules of Parliament and you yourself entrust to me. Call to order. This Honorable House is now in session.
Confirmation of minutes. Announcements by Madam Speaker.
Honorable members, let me remind you of the rules governing the sitting of this House. Any member may bring a motion or resolution for the consideration of the House. Only one member may be standing or speak at any given time. We also ask that our strangers in the gallery, that you place your phone on vibrate or silent as we continue in our debate. Be mindful of these rules and other standing orders as we proceed into today's sitting. I remind all strangers in the gallery that they are to remain silent and not show support or opposition for any member of the House, and they are to otherwise conduct themselves in a manner so as not to disrupt the proceeding of this honorable House. Motions. Honorable Member for Victoria.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I wish to move for the adoption of the following resolution, standing in my name. Whereas the rapid proliferation of digital technologies and social media platforms, including but not limited to Snapchat, Facebook, Instagram, Reddit, TikTok, X, formerly Twitter, YouTube, and Kik, has fundamentally altered the social landscape for youth across the Caribbean. And whereas minors beneath the age of 16 are entering critical stages of psychological, emotional, and cognitive development, making them uniquely vulnerable to the addictive algorithms, cyberbullying, predatory grooming, and explicit content prevalent on these platforms. And whereas empirical evidence demonstrates a clear correlation between unrestricted social media usage among young adolescents and escalating rates of anxiety, depression, sleep deprivation, and digital violence, which directly undermines their mental health and academic well-being. And whereas existing self-regulation by social media corporations has proven insufficient in robustly verifying user age and protecting minors from systemic digital harms, be it resolved that the government of Grenada enacts comprehensive digital safety legislation to prohibit minors beneath the age of 16 from holding or operating personal, unrestricted accounts on designated social media platforms, including Snapchat, Facebook, Instagram, Reddit, TikTok, X, YouTube, and Kik. Be it resolved that social media companies operating within our jurisdiction be legally mandated to implement rigorous, privacy-preserving age verification mechanisms to ensure compliance with this age restriction under penalty of severe economic sanction for non-compliance. Be it further resolved that the Ministry of Education incorporates comprehensive digital literacy and cyber safety education into the national school curriculum, equipping students, teachers, and parents with the tools to navigate the digital world responsibly while fostering safer online environments.
Honorable members, the question proposed to the Youth Parliament for the Parish of St. Mark, Grenada is, whereas the rapid proliferation, digital technology and social media platforms, including but not limited to Snapchat, Facebook, Instagram, Reddit, TikTok, X, formerly Twitter, YouTube, and Kik, has fundamentally altered the social landscape for youth across the Caribbean. And whereas minors beneath the age of 16 are entering critical stages of psychological, emotional, and cognitive development, making them uniquely vulnerable to the addictive algorithm, cyberbullying, predatory grooming, and explicit content prevalent on this platform. And whereas empirical evidence demonstrates a clear correlation between unrestricted social media usage among young adolescents and escalating rate of anxiety, depression, sleep deprivation, and digital violence, which directly undermine their mental health and academic well-being. And whereas existing self-regulation by social media cooperation has proven insufficient in robustly verifying usage age and protecting minors from systemic digital harm. Be it resolved that the government of Grenada enact comprehensive digital safety regulation to prohibit minors beneath the age of 16 from holding or operating personal, unrestricted accounts on designated social media platforms, including Snapchat, Facebook, Instagram, Reddit, TikTok, X, YouTube, and Kik. Be it also resolved that social media companies operating within our jurisdiction be legally mandated to implement rigorous, privacy-preserving age verification mechanism to ensure compliance with this age restriction under penalty of severe economic sanction for non-compliance. Be it further resolved that the Ministry of Education incorporate comprehensive digital literacy and cyber safety education into the national school curriculum, equipping students, teachers, and parents with the tools to navigate the digital world responsibly while fostering safe online environment. Youth Parliamentarian for Victoria.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, strangers in the gallery. Imagine receiving a phone call in the middle of the night telling you that your 14-year-old child has attempted to take their own life after months of relentless cyberbullying. Imagine discovering that your 13-year-old daughter has been manipulated by an online predator pretending to be another teenager. Imagine watching your child become withdrawn, anxious, and unable to sleep because their entire self-worth is determined by likes, followers, and comments from strangers. The painful truth is that for many families, it is no longer imagination, it is reality. Today, we are not debating whether or not social media is useful. We are debating whether children under the age of 16 should have unrestricted access to platforms that expose them to risks they are not yet developmentally prepared to manage. The role of every responsible government is to protect its most vulnerable citizens, and no group is more deserving than that of our children. Before I proceed, Madam Speaker, I would like to define the following terms in this resolution. Madam Speaker, permission to quote throughout this speech.
Permission granted.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, and even strangers in the gallery, first I will define for you minors beneath the age of 16. According to sciencedirect.com, and I quote, it refers to all persons who have not yet reached their 16th birthday. Following the same site, our same credible sites, sciencedirect.com, social media platforms are defined as, and I quote, immersive digital environments that influence physical world behavior that allow users to interact, share information, and express themselves online with chosen anonymity, leading to the creation of different personas and ethical structures compared to the physical world. End quote. Madam Speaker, but before I end, there is still one more definition I must include, unrestricted accounts. And I quote, it refers to the personal social media accounts that allow minors to freely communicate, post content, receive messages from strangers, and access public content without meaningful age-based protections. End quote. Madam Speaker, our team firmly supports this resolution because protecting children must always take precedence over protecting corporate profits or unlimited digital access. This brings me to my first point, Madam Speaker. Children under 16 are developmentally vulnerable and require protection. Children under 16 are developmentally vulnerable and require protection. Strangers in the gallery. Child is a period of growth. Science consistently tells us that the part of the brain responsible for judgment, impulse control, emotional regulation, and risk management are still developing throughout adolescence. Yet, social media companies deliberately design their platforms to capture and hold attention. Endless scrolling, autoplay videos, strict systems, notifications, and personalized algorithms are not accidental features, but they are psychological tools designed to maximize engagement. Madam Speaker, adults struggle to resist these systems. So how then can we reasonably expect a 13 or even a 14-year-old to do so? I, for myself, when I am scrolling on my phone, my mind is blown away. I cannot even resist it myself. As a result, many young users experience the following. 1, cyberbullying that follows them home after school. 2, dangerous online challenges. 3, unrealistic beauty standards. 4, anxiety from constant comparison. 5, sleep deprivation from excessive screen time. And most of all, but sadly, grooming by adults posing as children. Madam Speaker, may I hasten to add that freedom without protection is not freedom, it is neglect. Freedom without protection is not freedom, it is neglect. We already recognize that children require age restrictions in many areas of life. We do not allow them to purchase alcohol, gamble, or even sign legal contracts because society understands that maturity develops over time. The digital world should be no different, Madam Speaker. If we accept age limits to protect children in the physical world, then we should also accept reasonable limits to even protect them in the digital world, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, and even strangers in the gallery, this brings me to my second point. Prevention is better than trying to repair irreversible harm. Prevention is better than trying to repair irreversible harm. Members of the House, every day that we delay meaningful action, more children become victims. When a child has been groomed online, no law can erase that trauma. When intimate images have been shared across the internet, they cannot be taken back. When relentless cyberbullying pushes a child into depression or even self-harm, Madam Speaker, the emotional scars may last for years. This resolution is not about punishing children or even denying them technology. It is about preventing these tragedies before they occur. Importantly, this resolution does not stop children from learning online, communicating with family, or even using educational technology. Instead, it restricts unrestricted access to platforms they have repeatedly failed to protect young users while requiring schools to teach digital literacy and cyber safety. This means our approach must be balanced. Madam Speaker, we are not replacing reasonable safeguards around our children, but we are also equipping students, teachers as myself, and even parents with the knowledge to navigate the digital world responsibly. Through this, Madam Speaker, we will learn online privacy, responsible digital citizenship, recognizing misinformation, avoiding scams, identifying grooming, cyberbullying prevention, and most of all, healthy online habits. Madam Speaker, I must hasten to say that this resolution is not simply saying no. It is teaching children why, when, and even how to participate in safe spaces when they are much older. This is exactly how good public safety or even policy should work, combining protection with education. Our opponents may argue, Madam Speaker, that parents alone should supervise their children online. Madam Speaker, while personal guidance is essential, even the most attentive parents cannot monitor every message, every algorithm, or even every stranger who reaches out to their child. Might I have to laugh about this because billion-dollar technology companies employ thousands of engineers whose job is to keep users engaged. It is unrealistic to expect them to fight this battle alone. The government has always partnered with families to protect children. We require seatbelts in cars. We regulate tobacco and alcohol sales. We establish compulsory education. Likewise, it is entirely appropriate for the government to establish reasonable safeguards in digital spaces. Ladies and gentlemen, Madam Speaker, strangers in the gallery, this debate is ultimately about one simple question. When the evidence tells us that the unrestricted social media exposes children to addiction, exploitation, cyberbullying, and declining mental health, do we stand by and hope for the best, or do we act before children are harmed? Our answer is clear, Madam Speaker. We choose protection over profits. We choose prevention over regrets. We choose responsible regulation over dangerous inaction because childhood is too precious to gamble with. For those reasons, Madam Speaker, I proudly urge you souls to support this resolution. Thank you.
Youth Parliamentarian for Diamond South.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, people of the strangers of the gallery, thank you for your attendance this evening. We understand and know that the legal age for purchasing alcohol in Grenada is 18. You cannot simply walk into a bar or a blast and request them to serve you being under 18. Because we recognize that people or children require protection from products that may harm their development. Yet today, children as young as 11 can create unrestricted accounts on social media with just as little as their age or their names. Why do we place safeguards around substances that can harm and affect the development of children while allowing unrestricted access to platforms specifically designed to engineer and capture the same developing brain? According to the OECD, and Madam Speaker, please grant me permission to coach throughout my speech.
Permission granted.
Thank you. So the OECD abbreviation stands for Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. And so their research states that the average 15-year-old spends approximately 35 hours every week on social media. This is the equivalent to a full-time job. And I want us to sit with that number for a second. Your children, your cousins, your nieces, your nephews are spending 35 hours a week on social media. Even more alarming, the Pew Research Center found that 45% teenagers admit that they spend too much time on social media. So if nearly 1 in every 2 teenagers can tell you for themselves that they're spending too much time with this technology that they know is harming them, then we know we have a problem. Strangers in the gallery, Madam Speaker, I'm speaking to every single one of us who have children in our lives. We need to identify this issue and work along with them to fix it. They know it is a problem. It is harming them and they are addicted to it. Now we need to mitigate and help them, give them the ability to work against being addicted to social media. Today, my team stands proudly in support of the government of Grenada, enacting a comprehensive digital safety legislation to prohibit minors beneath the age of 16 from holding or operating personal, unrestricted accounts on the aforementioned social media platforms. This is not a debate about rejecting technology. Technology has given a lot to society. It has provided development for us in social areas and also in our education. One of the greatest dangers we fail to realize about social media is that it poses an effect on young person's sense of self. Adolescence is the period during which individuals grow their personalities, or what they learn what they value, and they understand how they fit into society. So instead of allowing these individuals to develop these values and love for societal changes and so naturally, we give them devices where everything that they see on these devices are what they develop personally. A 2025 systematic review examining adolescent identity development found that frequent social comparison on social media has made it more difficult for young people to develop clear, authentic sense of self. This review also found that although authentic online expression can be beneficial, idealized self-presentation and comparison can interfere with healthy identity development. Rather than asking, who am I? Or young people are now asking, how many likes am I worth? How many followers can I gain? This constant search for validation also affects self-esteem. It goes unsaid, Madam Speaker. It is now built around followers, likes, and comments. Now the parents of our adolescents, they're sitting and questioning, why don't they look like all of the influencers on the internet? A 2025 systematic review involving more than 17,000 adolescents found that heavy social media use was associated with lower self-esteem, poor body image, and increased social comparison. Instead of building confidence naturally and from personal achievement, kindness, and character, many young people are judging themselves through filtered photographs and images that have been doctored to gain their attention. Now, social media may seem very unrelated to substances such as alcohol or perhaps gambling, but the science tells a different story. While one is a substance, the other is technology. Both actually involve the brain's reward system and can produce patterns of compulsive behavior. In a research paper titled Brain Anatomy Alterations Associated with Social Networking Site Addiction, neuroscientists Ting-Hua He, Ophir Turrell, and Antoine Becara define social media addiction as a user's maladaptive psychological state of dependency, manifested through obsessive patterns that interfere with normal functioning and produces symptoms including withdrawal, relapse, growing tolerance, conflict, and mood modification, all of which we identify are issues that are very similar to having an addiction with alcohol or gambling. This constant pursuit of instant rewards has serious consequences inside our classrooms. A research paper, again, called Impact of Social Media on Cognitive Development of Children and Young Adults, a systematic review, concluded that excessive social media use was associated with impaired attention, reduced working memory, and poor executive functioning. Madam Speaker, all that I've listed here are needed in the classroom for students to perform at peak ability. If these things are being affected via social media, then we see the problem. It is in front of our face, blatant. We see the problems, yet we still deny that the students are being affected. They come to school tired, they come to school like walking zombies, Madam Speaker. Yet we're wondering why they can't sleep at night. Blue light in their screen all night, in their faces all night. Their brains have no time to shut down and gain rest. We often hear the phrase, social media isn't the problem, it is how people use it. Madam Speaker, please grant me 1 more minute to wrap up my speech.
You have 30 seconds.
So we often hear the phrase, thank you, Madam Speaker, sorry. We often hear the phrase, social media isn't the problem, it is how people use it. But we do not apply that same logic consistently across the board. We can say cars are useful, yet we still require a license to drive them. Medicine saves lives, yet children cannot purchase them without restrictions. Alcohol is enjoyed responsibly, yet I do not give my little brother a carb after school when he comes home from classes. No, we understand that these are issues. This debate is not about rejecting technology. It is about recognizing that childhood is too valuable to surrender to algorithms. Thank you.
Youth Parliamentarian for Diamond North.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise on behalf of the opposition to speak against this motion before this honorable House. At the onset, let me make one thing absolutely clear. The opposition agrees that children and young people must be protected from cyberbullying, online predators, harmful content, and the negative effects that excessive use of social media can have on mental health. However, Madam Speaker, the issue before this honorable House is not whether children deserve protection. They most certainly do. The real question is whether a legal prohibition on social media accounts for all persons under the age of 16 is the most effective, practical, and proportionate way to achieve that objective. The opposition firmly believes that it is not. In the context of this debate, a prohibition means a legal ban preventing minors under the age of 16 from holding or operating unrestricted accounts on designated social media platforms. This definition was sourced from the Black Laws Dictionary and the Cambridge Dictionary. Madam Speaker, good legislation must be proportionate. It must be balanced. The legitimate need to protect vulnerable young people with equal important need to preserve access to education, communication, and digital participation. A policy that is broader than necessary may unintentionally restrict opportunities without effectively eliminating the very harms it seeks to prevent. As first speaker, I will establish the opposition position that the proposed legislation is ineffective, impractical, and disproportionate. I will demonstrate that education, parental involvement, and targeted regulations are for a more effective solution than a blanket prohibition. The following speakers will explain how this proposed ban may negatively affect education, communication, and opportunities available to young people throughout Grenada. They will also respond to the government's argument in greater detail and demonstrate why the opposition's approach better protects our nation's youth while preserving their opportunities to learn, grow, and participate responsibly in the digital world. Madam Speaker, the government has correctly identified genuine online dangers. We do not dispute that cyberbullying, predatory grooming, explicit content, and excessive social media use are serious concerns that deserve urgent attention. However, identifying a problem does not automatically mean the suggested solution is the correct one. The internet is a global space that does not stop at international borders. Many social media platforms operate internationally, and age verification systems remain imperfect. Despite the government's proposal for stronger verification measures, determined users can often bypass these systems by entering false date of birth, using persons' information, or accessing alternative platforms. As a result, the proposed prohibition would be extremely difficult to enforce. More importantly, it risks creating unintended consequences. Instead of encouraging responsible online behavior, the legislation may simply drive young people's online activity on the ground. If children create hidden accounts, parents, guardians, and teachers lose valuable opportunities to supervise and guide them. Young people may also become less willing to report cyberbullying or online abuse because they know they are breaking the law. Madam Speaker, legislation should solve problems, not merely give the impression that they are solving them. The government may argue that even if some minors evade the law, the legislation will still reduce overall harm. However, legislation should not be judged by its intentions alone. It must be judged by whether it achieves its objectives in practice. If large numbers of minors simply migrate to hidden or unregulated accounts, the law may reduce parental oversight while leaving children exposed to many of the very dangers we seek to prevent. Furthermore, the government may assume that restricting access will eliminate harm. The opposition respectfully submits that this assumption is flawed. Harmful online behavior can still occur through messaging applications, online gaming communities, and other digital platforms that may fall outside the scope of this legislation. Therefore, the root problem is not simply access to social media. The real issue is the lack of digital literacy, cyber safety education, responsible online behavior, and meaningful parental guidance. Madam Speaker, social media is not solely a source of risk. It also provides significant educational, social, and economic opportunities. Across Grenada and the wider Caribbean, students use online platforms to access educational videos, collaborate on school assignments, participate in learning communities, and develop digital skills that are increasingly essential in today's economy. Young entrepreneurs promote their small businesses online, aspiring artists showcase their talents, and students gain exposure to scholarships, competition, leadership programs, and career opportunity. A blanket prohibition would deny many responsible young people access to these benefits because of the misconduct of a minority. The opposition believes there's a more balanced and effective alternative. Instead of imposing a broad liquor ban, the government should strengthen digital literacy education in our schools, equip parents and guardians with the tools such as Google Family Link, Apple Screen Time, and Microsoft Family Safety to supervise online activity effectively. Require technology companies to provide stronger safety features for minors, not against minors. Improve reporting mechanisms for cyberbullying and exploitation, and ensure that existing laws against predators are vigorously enforced. These measures address the root cause of online harm while preserving the educational and developmental opportunities that responsible technology use can provide. Madam Speaker, every member in this honorable House shares the responsibility of protecting Grenada's young people. The difference between the government and the opposition is not our commitment to children's safety, it is our approach. The government places its confidence in prohibition. The opposition places its confidence in education, responsible parenting, and targeted regulation. We believe lasting protection comes not from preventing young people from entering the digital world, but from preparing them to navigate it wisely, responsibly, and safely. For these reasons, the opposition respectfully urges this honorable House to reject the motion. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Youth Parliamentarian for Union.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, honorable members, I rise today in respectful opposition to this resolution. Let me be clear. We do not deny the risk posed by social media. Cyberbullying, predatory grooming, and explicit content are real dangers. But I argue that the proposed ban on minors under 16 is misguided because what happens online happens in real life, and we cannot simply legislate reality away. Social media is not a separate universe. It is an extension of our children's daily lives. Friendships are formed there. Ideas are exchanged there. Creativity blossoms there. To prohibit young people from these platforms is to deny them access to the modern public square. It is like telling them they may not walk into town, join a club, or speak in class discussions. What happens online happens in real life, and cutting them off from it risks isolating them from their peers and the skills they will need to thrive in this digital economy. The proposition may present a correlation between social media use and anxiety or depression. But correlation is not causation. These same struggles exist offline, in classrooms, in playgrounds, in homes. If children are being bullied online, they can simply block and even report the bully. They can't block them in real life. To ban social media is to treat the symptom, not the cause. The real challenge is teaching resilience,
empathy, and responsible use. If a child is bullied online, the harm is real, but the solution is not to ban the playground. It is to teach children how to stand up, how to report, how to seek support. Furthermore, Madam Speaker, bans often drive behavior on the ground. Young people are resourceful. They will create hidden accounts, use VPNs, or migrate to platforms beyond our jurisdiction. In doing so, they will be less supervised, less guided, and more exposed to the very dangers we seek to prevent. What happens online happens in real life, and if we push them into the shadows, these harms will only multiply. Instead of prohibition, let us pursue empowerment. Let us strengthen parental involvement, equip teachers with digital literacy tools, and demand accountability from corporations without criminalizing ordinary families. Let us recognize that social media is not just a threat. It is also a classroom, a stage, a community. Our children deserve guidance, not exile. Madam Speaker, this resolution risks overreach. It risks cutting our youth off from the digital commons while failing to address the deeper social and emotional challenges they face. What happens online happens in real life, and our response must be education, empowerment, and engagement, not prohibition. For these reasons, I urge this Honorable House to reject the resolution as it stands and to pursue a path that protects without isolating, that guides without banning, and that prepares our children for the realities of both the online and offline worlds. I thank you.
Youth Parliamentarian for Grosse Pointe.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, esteemed judges, members of this Honorable House, and the strangers in the gallery, good afternoon. Before I begin, Madam Speaker, I humbly ask for your permission to go throughout my speech.
Permission granted.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Imagine walking your one and only 13-year-old child in a crowded, busy street in St. George's. Imagine leaving them all alone in the middle of the night and turning your back and say, good luck, stay safe. None of us in this Honorable House would ever do that. Madam Speaker, we have locks on our doors, we have laws on our streets, and we have parents looking out to keep our children safe. But right now, as we sit in this comfortable chamber, thousands of parents in Grenada forced to do exactly that every single night. The moment a child under 16 opens a smartphone to go onto Instagram, TikTok, or Snapchat, they're stepping into a massive, unmonitored digital square filled with millions of strangers, completely unsupervised. Let us be clear, Madam Speaker. The motion before us today is not about taking away freedom. It is about protecting our children. By stopping minors under 16 from owning unrestricted personal accounts, the government of Grenada is doing what any responsible nation must do. We are drawing a firm line in the sand to keep our children safe. We do this, Madam Speaker, starting with our first and most critical duty, protecting our children from dangerous people who want to do them harm. Madam Speaker, when we allow a child under 16 to open a public, unrestricted account, we are handing strangers a direct pipeline right into the bedrooms and lives of Grenadian children. Let us think about what it means to be under 16. At this age, teenagers are trying to figure out who they are. They are looking for attention. They're looking for validation. They're trying to fit in. Madam Speaker, you know online predators know this perfectly, right? They do not look like monsters on the screen. They pretend to be friends. They pretend to share the same hobbies. They offer sweet, comforting words, and they slowly trick these children into sharing private information or explicit photos. And what are the big tech companies doing about this? Absolutely nothing, Madam Speaker. They protect their profits, not our children. The United Nations Children's Fund recently warned in a global child safety report, and I quote, "Self-regulation by social media platforms have failed to protect children from online grooming and exploitation. Governments must step in with clear laws to create safe boundaries for minors," end of quote. Madam Speaker, that is what exactly the government is doing today. We are building a legal firewall. We are taking the target off our children's back. Now, the opposition may say this law is impossible to enforce and we cannot control what happens online. But Madam Speaker, we say if these tech giants have the technology to track a child's every preference for profit, they absolutely have the technology to verify the age. This bill simply forces them to use their immense power to protect our children or face severe economic sanctions they will cut directly into their profits. It is time to put our children's safety over corporate greed. But the danger does not only come from strangers online. Madam Speaker, it also comes from how these apps weaponize relationships among our youths themselves. This brings me to our second pillar, stopping digital and schoolyard violence. We must address how social media is tearing apart peace and safety of our schools. Social media has become a megaphone for schoolyard bullying and physical violence. In the past, we know if two students had a disagreement, it will either settle privately or they will talk it out. But today, a small argument is posted on Instagram and shared to hundreds of students in seconds. Madam Speaker, cyberbullying does not stop when the school bell rings at 3 p.m. It follows our children in their bedrooms. It follows our children home. It sneaks into their bedrooms and it tortures them 24/7. Madam Speaker, our children are paying the price in trauma and blood. Worse yet, their hard-working parents are left standing at the bedroom doors, completely heartbroken and helpless. The World Health Organization has sounded the alarm on this digital crisis. In their global guidelines on adolescent health, they stated, and I quote, "The rapid rise of cyberbullying and toxic online comparison is directly linked to an escalating mental health crisis among young adolescents, resulting in severe anxiety, social isolation, and academic decline," end of quote. Madam Speaker, we cannot ignore this warning. Now, I know the opposition may stand and say we are trying to shut our youth out of the modern digital economy, but let me correct them now. The final part of this motion explicitly orders the Ministry of Education to put digital literacy and cyber safety lessons directly into our school curricula. We are not banning technology, Madam Speaker. We are simply moving our children away from toxic, addictive feeds and putting them into safe, structured classrooms. Madam Speaker, esteemed judges, as this debate comes to a close, the choice before this House is simple. We can either leave the digital doors wide open and let foreign tech giants exploit our children, steal their data, or ruin their mental health for profit, or we can stand as a proud, independent nation and say, no more, not our children, not in Grenada. Our youth are not products to be bought and sold. They are the future of this country. So I urge this House, let us stand together and build this legal firewall against predators. Madam Speaker, let us clear the toxic feeds away from our classrooms and bring peace back to our schools. Madam Speaker, I ask for permission to wrap up my speech.
You have 30 seconds.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I continue, and let us vote for this motion to give our children a safe, structured, and educated digital future they deserve. Madam Speaker, I commend this motion to the House, and I thank you.
Youth Parliamentarian for Diamond East.
Madam Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of this House, esteemed judges. Madam Speaker, may I ask for permission to quote throughout my speech?
Permission granted.
Okay. As the opposition, we are here today to show you that a total ban on social media for under 16s is not a shield of safety. It is a massive step backward. While the proposition campaigns on emotion, our team will anchor this debate in reality, parental authority, and the supreme law of our land. We cannot protect our youth by stripping away their constitutional rights. Today we will prove that education and digital literacy, not state-mandated censorship, is the true path forward. That brings me to my first point, the safety trap and parental abdication. Let's look at the blatant contradictions in the proposition's case. They target headline-making platforms like Instagram and TikTok, but completely ignore Discord and online video games. By banning platforms with massive safety budgets and global moderation tools, you do not eliminate risk. You simply drive tech-savvy teens into smaller, unmonitored corners of the internet. You are leaving the back door wide open to spaces with zero oversight. Worse yet, this blanket ban creates a crisis of parental abdication. When the government steps in to act as a digital nanny, it signals to the parents that the digital space has been sanitized. Parents naturally lower their guard, stop monitoring, stop mentoring, and assume the law has solved the problem. Madam Speaker, raising tech-literate children is a holistic obligation, not a government mandate. This policy strips parents of their authority while giving them the false sense of security that leaves Grenadian youth more vulnerable than ever before. That brings me to my second point, the constitutional violation. Let us directly turn to the supreme law of our land. The Grenada Constitution does not contain any age-based clause. Constitutional rights belong to every citizen from the moment they are born. Section 10 of the Constitution states that, and I quote, except with his own consent, no person shall be hindered in the enjoyment of his freedom of expression, which explicitly includes the freedom to receive and communicate ideas and information without interference, and I unquote. While the proposition will argue that public safety allows for restrictions, a total blanket ban is entirely unequal and obliterates the right itself by blocking youth from the modern public square. Furthermore, Section 11, Part 1 of the Constitution states that, and I quote, no person shall be hindered in the enjoyment of his freedom of assembly and association, and I unquote. In the modern era, community is digital. Under 16s use networks to organize youth groups, study, and support one another. A blanket ban systematically dismantles these support networks, criminalizes peaceable digital assembly. The proposition assumes minors lack the capacity to hold these rights, but look at the mechanism for justice. Section 16, Part 1 of the Constitution states, and I quote, that if any person alleges that their fundamental rights to work, the state must mandate an invasive sweeping of identity verification infrastructure. Citizens will be forced to upload government IDs and submit to biometric AI face scans just to open an account. This brings me to data privacy. Section 1C of the Constitution states, and I quote, that every person is entitled to protection for the privacy of his home and other property. Additionally, Section 7, Part 1 of the Constitution states that except with his own, from every single citizen is a blatant violation of minute to finish my speech.
You have 45 seconds.
Want to swim them away from the water until they face a tidal wave. We must educate our youth on digital safety, not isolate them until it's too late. This ban exposes a hypocritical truth. The state is directing a moral panic toward tech platforms while turning a completely blind eye to physical dangers like dangerous liquor blocks, illicit substances, and community violence on the actual streets of Grenada. This ban does not protect children. It fights digital ghosts while ignoring real-world responsibilities. We urge a vote against this motion. Thank you.
Youth Parliamentarian for Duquesne.
Madam Speaker, honorable members of this House, specially invited guests, judges, and strangers in the gallery, good evening. I rise today in full support of this motion because our responsibility as legislators is to protect the welfare and the future of the children of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique. Before I begin, I urge every member of this House to listen carefully and clearly. This debate is not about saying that technology is bad or denying children access to internet. Rather, it is about protecting children under the age of 16 from unrestricted access to social media platforms that are deliberately designed to hold and capture their attention for profits. It is also about requiring these companies to implement effective age verification systems and stronger privacy protection. Today, Madam Speaker, I will prove this motion by demonstrating 3 key points. Social media reduces academic focus, it hinders brain development, and unrestricted social media use undermines the Ministry of Education efforts to improve educational outcomes. Firstly, Madam Speaker, social media reduces academic focus. Education is the foundation of every successful nation. Yet, every minute a child spends endlessly scrolling through social media is a minute taken away from reading, studying, and preparing for examinations. More importantly, these platforms do not simply consume time, they compete for students' attention. Through infinite scrolling, autoplay videos, and personalized algorithms, social media platforms are deliberately designed to keep users engaged for as long as possible. The National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine found that while social media can provide educational and social benefits, certain platform features can displace healthy activities such as studying, sleeping, and face-to-face interaction. As a result, Madam Speaker, many students find it increasingly difficult to concentrate on their work. This is reflected in a research conducted by the OECD, which found that students who are frequently distracted by digital devices during learning generally perform worse academically. UNICEF has also warned that excessive digital engagement can negatively affect children's learning and overall well-being.
Youth Parliamentarian, are you quoting throughout your speech?
No, Madam Speaker.
Okay.
The opposition argue that parents should simply monitor, that parents should simply monitor their children's online activity. While undoubtedly this plays a vital role, the Five Rights Foundation found that children can easily bypass weak age verification systems and create accounts despite existing age restrictions. If these companies cannot adequately protect children, then the government has a responsibility to act. Secondly, Madam Speaker, social media hinders healthy brain development. According to the American Psychological Association, children between ages of 10 and 14 are at a critical stage of brain development, particularly in the areas responsible for judgment, attention, impulse control, and emotional regulation. Yet, social media platforms are intentionally designed to exploit these developing minds through notifications, likes, and endless personalized content that repeatedly trigger the brain reward system, encouraging children to return again and again. Madam Speaker, children under the ages of 16 are still developing. That's why we already place age restrictions on alcohol, gambling, and other activities that may negatively affect young people. This legislation follows the same principle. It is not about punishment. It is about protection. In addition to reducing academic focus and hindering healthy brain development, unrestricted social media use also undermines the Ministry of Education's effort to improve educational outcomes. Every year, the government of Grenada invests significant resources through the Ministry of Education to improve literacy, numeracy, and overall student achievement. Teachers work endlessly and tirelessly with students for CPEA, CSEC, and CAPE examinations, while schools continue to implement programs designed to improve overall outcomes. However, these efforts are undermined when students are constantly distracted by addictive social media platforms. In the 2026 national budget, approximately $179.6 million was allocated to the Ministry of Education, demonstrating the government's commitment to strengthening our education system. Madam Speaker, it makes little to no sense that the government invests heavily in improving education while ignoring technologies that compete for our children's attention every single day. If we are serious about improving educational outcomes, then we must also be serious about protecting the learning environment. Madam Speaker, this motion is about responsibility. It is about giving children the opportunity to learn, grow, and develop before exposing them to platforms specifically designed to maximize engagement. I thank you.
Youth Parliamentarian for Coast Guard.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Honorable judges, worthy opponents, ladies and gentlemen of the gallery, good afternoon. Childhood is supposed to be noisy. We know when we stop hearing kids in the other room, they possibly bathed themselves in Vaseline or gotten themselves in trouble. Childhood is supposed to be about scraped knees, football after school, bicycle racing down the street, climbing trees for mangoes and plums, conversations around the dinner table, and falling asleep because we spend too much time outside in the hot sun. Not because we spent it scrolling on social media. Yet somewhere along the way, we stopped asking what social media was doing to our children's bodies, and I think we are all worried about what they're watching, but not what they are becoming. Today, the average 15-year-old spends approximately 35 hours every week on social media, equivalent to a working full-day job. The exact words of my colleague, the Minister of Diamond South, stated. Madam Speaker, please permit me to quote throughout my speech.
Permission granted.
Thank you. Today, my team proudly stands in support of banning social media accounts for children under the age of 16, not because we fear technology, but because we value childhood. Adolescence is one of the most important periods of physical growth a person will ever experience. Bone strengthening, muscle development, posture becoming established. Healthy habits are formed that often last a lifetime. Yet, excessive social media use quietly interrupts many of these natural processes. The World Health Organization recommends that young people engage in at least 60 minutes of moderate to vigorous physical activity every day because movement is essential to healthy development. But what have we replaced movement with? The walk to a friend's house has become a text message. The bicycle has become another scroll. The afternoon outdoors has become another afternoon indoors. If we're being honest with ourselves, many of us in this room know what it feels like. My apologies. If we're being honest with ourselves, many of us in this room know exactly what it feels like to pick up our phone for just 5 minutes, only to realize our hour has disappeared. We know what it feels like to sacrifice sleep because we keep scrolling. We know what it feels like to ignore our posture because we are glued to a screen. We know what it feels like to reach for our phones during uncomfortable moments instead of dealing with the boredom, loneliness, and stress. Somewhere along the way, social media has become more than entertainment. For many people, it has become a crutch. And if fully developed adults with years of life experience, emotional maturity, and self-control still struggle to put down our phones, how can we responsibly expect a 13-year-old standing at one of its most important stages of its physical and emotional development to succeed where most of us fail? Now, our very worthy opposition may argue that children simply need more discipline. They may say parents should monitor them more closely. And yes, parents absolutely have an important role to play. But let us be honest. Parents are not competing against ordinary products. They are competing against billion-dollar technology companies that employs psychologists, behavioral scientists, artificial intelligence, and colorful algorithms that are specifically designed to keep users online for as long as possible. That is not a fair fight. That is why we have my apology. Society has never expected parents to carry every burden alone. We say we need a village to raise a child for a reason. That is why we have a minimum age for alcohol. A village will never see my little sister drinking a Carib and not find a way to reprimand or condone that behavior. Because we understand that developing minds and developing body deserves protection. This proposal simply applies that the same principle be applied to the digital world. Ladies and gentlemen, children only get one childhood, one chance to build strong bodies, one chance to develop healthy habits, one chance to discover confidence that isn't measured by followers or likes, one chance to grow before the algorithm begins shaping how they think, how they move, how they live. This debate is not about taking something away from the children. It is about giving something back. Because if social media has become a crutch to many full-grown adults, how can we expect it not to become a cage for children who are still learning how to walk through life? Learning how to walk through life. Thank you.
Youth Parliamentarian for Victoria.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, before I proceed, I must hasten to add that in order for us to include digital literacy into our educational system, the government of Grenada must first develop our national curriculum. Because as it stands, our secondary school students and even our tertiary education students are only relying on the backbone of CXC's syllabi. And Madam Speaker, it's about time something is done. So we, the Grenadians, Caricunians, PT Martinicans, if I can put it like that, we can leave a bold statement to the outer world. Madam Speaker, the opposition claims that restricting social media access for children under 16 would damage Grenada's economy. That argument places corporate profits over well-being of our nation's children. First, we must understand that children under 16 are not the backbone of Grenada's digital economy. I hate to say that, but it's true. Because you are all only consumers. And of course, we must realize that the revenue that social media companies earn from minors is insufficient or even insignificant compared to the long-term economic costs associated with dealing with mental health, cybercrime, addiction, and reduced educational outcomes. Second, Madam Speaker, this resolution does not ban social media. Instead, we must realize that millions of adults and young people aged 16 and over will continue to use these social media platforms, and even other platforms that you all did mention. Businesses, entrepreneurs, tourism operators, and content creators will still advertise and market online. The digital economy remains intact. Vulnerable minors are offered, or even I should say, afforded greater protection. Madam Speaker, we must even look at the fact that even with this, there will be decline in mental health. So of course, the opposition did ignore the economic burden of inaction. Remember the mental health treatment, cyberbullying intervention, declining academic performance, and productivity losses places substantial pressure on families and public resources. We must realize that a healthier, better educated generation is far more valuable to Grenada's future economy than preserving unrestricted access to social media for children. Madam Speaker, they also mentioned that children need social media for learning and communication. The opposition here creates a false choice. This resolution does not ban the internet, educational websites, school platforms, emails, or even supervised digital communications. It targets unrestricted personal accounts on high-risk social media platforms that prioritize engagement over child safety. A child can still learn online without scrolling endlessly or even through endless algorithm-driven feeds or being exposed to predators and harmful contents. They even mentioned, Madam Speaker, that there is no evidence that this would improve mental health. Well, I had to laugh, I even had to chuckle a bit, but Madam Speaker, the opposition, they ignore the overwhelming body of research linking excessive social media use with anxiety, depression, poor sleep, cyberbullying, body image issues, and declining academic performance. This resolution is not based on specialization, but on precaution. When evidence consistently identifies a preventable risk to children, responsible governments act before the damage becomes irreversible. Then finally, of course, they even made clear that this violates children's rights. Of course, the member on the other side, she ensured that she provided her well-sourced information. She ensured to say that it violates children's rights. Rights are never absolute, Madam Speaker. Every child also has the right to safety, development, education, and even protection for exploitation. Governments routinely place age restriction on activities such as driving, gambling, alcohol consumption, and voting because children lack the maturity to assess long-term risks. Social media should be treated with the same level of responsibility, given its documented impact on young minds. Madam Speaker, in a nutshell, the opposition asks us to trust corporations whose profits depend on keeping children online for as long as possible. We ask this House to place children's safety above corporate profits. This resolution is balanced. It combines age restrictions, accountability for technology companies, and digital literacy education. It does not reject technology. It demands that technology serve our children rather than exploit them. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Honorable members, the question is that the following resolution be agreed. Whereas the rapid proliferation of digital technology and social media platforms, included but not limited to Snapchat, Facebook, Instagram, Reddit, TikTok, X, formerly Twitter, YouTube, and Kik, has fundamentally altered the social landscape for the youth across the Caribbean. And whereas minors beneath the age of 16 are entering critical stages of psychological, emotional, and cognitive development, making them uniquely vulnerable to the addictive algorithm, cyberbullying, predatory grooming, and explicit content prevalent on that platforms. And whereas empirical evidence demonstrates a clear correlation between unrestricted social media usage among young adolescents and escalating rate of anxiety, depression, sleep deprivation, and digital violence, which directly undermines their mental health and academic well-being. And whereas existing self-regulation by social media cooperation has proven insufficient in robustly verifying user age and protecting minors from systematic digital harm, be it resolved that the government of Grenada enact comprehensive digital safety, personal, unrestricted accounts as designated social media platform, including Snapchat, Facebook, Instagram, Reddit, TikTok, X, YouTube, and Kik. Be it also resolved that social media companies cooperate within our jurisdiction be legally mandated to implement rigorous, privacy-preserving self-verification mechanism to ensure compliance with this age restriction under penalty of severe economic sanction for non-compliance. Be it further resolved that the Ministry of Education incorporate comprehensive digital literacy and cyber safety education into the national school curriculum, equipping students, teachers, and parents with the tools to navigate the digital world responsibly while fostering safer online environment. As many are as in favor of the resolution be agreed, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those of the contrary opinion, say nay.
Nay. Nay.
I think the ayes have it. The ayes do have it.
Adjournment.
Good parliamentarian. for Diamond East.
This Honorable House has been adjourned. Sign a die.
Honorable members, the question proposed is that this Honorable House stands adjourned. Side and I.
Honorable Speaker, distinguished guests, facilitators, fellow youth parliamentarians, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. As we bring the remarkable Youth Parliament program to a close, it is my distinct honor to deliver the vote of thanks on behalf of all the participants. Leadership is not merely about occupying a position. It's about inspiring others to rise. Throughout this program, we have been challenged to think critically, speak confidently, and lead with purpose. For that, we owe many people our heartfelt gratitude. First and foremost, we give thanks to Almighty God for his guidance, protection, and wisdom throughout this journey. Without his blessings, none of this would have been possible. Our sincere appreciation goes to the Ministry of Youth and everyone who worked tirelessly to organize and execute this Youth Parliament program. Thank you for believing in the potential of Grenada's young people and for providing us with an invaluable opportunity to develop us as future leaders. A very special and heartfelt thank you is extended to our facilitator, Ms. Digans, whose dedication has truly been the heartbeat of this program. Despite the demands of leading a school each day, she faithfully came to every session, often after long, exhausting work days. Even on evenings when attendance was very low, her enthusiasm never diminished. She continued to pour into us with patience, encouragement, and unwavering commitment. Ms. Digans, your passion for developing young leaders has inspired each of us, and your investment in our growth will not be forgotten. We are deeply grateful for your tireless service. We also extend sincere thanks to our youth associates, especially Alana George and Angela Gostin. Thank you for consistently making yourselves available and for being present even after demanding days of work. Your willingness to dedicate your time, energy, and support to this program is greatly appreciated. A special word of appreciation is also extended to the debaters of St. Mark's Secondary School, who answered a call, who answered a call at a very last minute to serve as our opposition and even our clerk. Your readiness to assist ensured that today's sitting could proceed successfully. We are truly grateful for your flexibility, professionalism, and willingness to support this program at such short notice. We are confident that this experience has not only contributed to today's success, but has also strengthened your debating, critical thinking, and parliamentary skills as you prepare for future competitions, including the Grand Leg debates. And just know sheep are coming for you all. We wish you every success in the competitions ahead. To our honorable speaker, members of parliament, guest presenters who will soon come, judges, and all our invited guests, thank you for sharing your knowledge, experience, and wisdom. Your guidance has strengthened our understanding of parliamentary procedure, governance, and responsible leadership. To my fellow youth parliamentarians, thank you for your enthusiasm, thoughtful debates, respectful discussions, and the friendships we have built. Though we represented different viewpoints, we live united by one common purpose: to become leaders who will positively impact our communities and even our nation. Finally, To everyone who worked behind the scenes, the coordinators, administrative staff, technical team, media personnel, volunteers, and don't forget about the food, the cook, and every individual whose efforts made this program a success, please accept our deepest gratitude. Your work may not always be visible, but it has certainly been invaluable. As we live here today, let us not see this as the end of our youth parliament experience, but as the beginning of a lifelong journey of service, leadership, and nation building. May we continue to use the knowledge, confidence, and friendships gained here to make a lasting difference in Grenada. On behalf of the youth parliamentarians, thank you to everyone who has contributed to making the program an unforgettable experience. May God continue to bless each of you, and may God continue to bless our beautiful nation.
Honorable members, the question proposed is that this honorable house stands adjourned, side that I. As many as of this opinion say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those of the contrary say nay.
Nay.
I think the ayes have it. The ayes do have it. The business of this youth parliament for the parish of St. Mark stands adjourned, sigh the die.